Buying a van-based small MPV like Fiat's Doblo has always been more about sense than style, but the improved version of this Italian 5 or 7-seat family-sized but still compact people carrier might surprise you with its sophistication.
Cars aren't always aspirational. Sometimes they're simply about getting the job done, practically, affordably and efficiently. Van-based MPVs are a good example of this refreshingly uncomplicated approach to automotive design. Models like this one, Fiat's Doblo. Now, British buyers first saw it in 2001, and a lot of them winced. Like Fiat's first-generation multipler people carrier, let's just politely say that looks were not a strong point. But the Italians learned quickly. A smarter 2004 facelift was followed then by this completely revised and it's in its own way rather smartly dressed second generation version launched in 2010. Fiat says that just 3% of this car's parts are shared with its predecessor, so it's a very different Doblo. And though they've still based it on a van, their Doblo Kangoo model, the idea has been to make this very affordable 5 or 7-seat family package feel as much like one of those pricey, purpose-designed, trendy mini MPVs as possible. So there are smoother looks, clothing, sophisticated suspension, a more powerfully efficient engine range and a smarter cabin. The end result still says sensible, but it doesn't say it quite as loudly.
Now, you won't be expecting too much from the performance on offer here, especially if you experience the weedy petrol and diesel engines that saw performance in previous generation models feature 0 to 60 times that extended up towards the 20-second barrier. In which case you'll probably be pleasantly surprised in this version. Okay, so no Doblo is what you'd call quick, but thanks to a torquey range of fresh engines, performance promises to be energetic enough for active owners. The diesel's blessed with more than enough muscle to shift or tow the busiest families, kids and clutter. There's a 95 brake horsepower, 1.4 litre 16 valve petrol unit at the foot of the range. That's a big step forward from its feeble predecessor, but most buyers will still rightly ignore it on the way to frugal yet gutsier 1.6 litre 105 brake horsepower and 2 litre 135 brake horsepower multi-jet diesel engines. Now, these will take you from rest to 60 in between 11.3 and 13.4 seconds, but the really important figures to note here are those of torque, pulling power. You'll get either 290 or 320 Newton meters, depending on whether you go for the 1.6 or the 2 litre, and those represent huge step forwards over their predecessor. Now, that means that in your Doblo, you'll be able to surprise more than a few other road users with your mid-range overtaking torque. Plus, that pulling power gives you laid-back flexibility around town that you can enhance further on the 1.6 litre model by opting for a Fiat's automated MTA 5-speed semi-automatic transmission. Around the corners, you can certainly complain about the power steering being short on feel, but there's not a lot else to moan about considering the modest standards of ride and handling usually attributed to this utilitarian class of car. Much of the credit for this can be directed towards this Doblo's redesigned bi-link independent rear suspension setup, which pretty much delivers on its promises of a comfortable and forgiving ride. And considering the high centre of gravity and relatively skinny tyres, there's relatively little body roll and a decent amount of grip too. It's all certainly no worse than that of many far pricier people carriers.
Even the most practical people like to dress smartly, something Fiat stylists forgot when bringing us the original version of this car. But they've redeemed themselves somewhat with this 137mm longer second generation model. Still boxy, but with a more curvaceous look these days and a large side glazed area. At the front, there are large enveloping headlamps, a deeper front grille and a curvaceous bonnet to give a more muscular appearance, while at the side there are even blacked out pillars to create the kind of floating roof effect we've seen on much trendier cars. but it's still square and van-like at heart, something families will appreciate once inside. This is, after all, now one of the largest van-based compact MPVs in the segment, with a footprint bigger than most family hatchbacks, so it's no surprise that the cabin is huge for the class. Rear passengers enter via sliding side doors, so there's no need to worry about kids denting the paintwork of adjacent cars when you're tightly parked at the supermarket. Once inside, the class-leadingly long 2.75 metre wheelbase means that 3 adults can sit reasonably comfortably alongside one another on short to medium journeys, provided they're on reasonably friendly terms, and their headgear can be as elaborate as the lofty roofline will allow. Look around you and there's some evidence of Fiat's desire to make this more than just a glorified van. You don't normally, for example, get electric windows on sliding doors, but they can be fitted here. And the boot, well, this tailgate is pretty heavy to lift and will be awkward to use in confined spaces. But once you're in, there's a class-leading 790 litres of room available, and that's much more than something comparable like a Citroen Berlingo Multispace. Now, with all this room, you can do lots of different things. The most obvious, perhaps, is to buy the family pack, which gives you 2 extra seats, making this the most affordable 7-seat MPV on the market. But even if, as I have here, you go for the 5-seat version, this loading bay is impressively flexible. Take this rear parcel shelf. You can either have it in the normal position, covering your baggage, or you can lower it so that it sits in a midpoint and will carry up to 70 kilograms, the family dog, for example, so that he needn't necessarily graze through your shopping on the way home from the supermarket. On the floor here, you've got lashing eyes so that you can tie down heavier items and stop them moving around. Now, if you have the parcel shelf in its lower position, it can combine with the folded rear seats to create a reasonably flat loading area. And these rear seats tumble as well, so that if you take the parcel shelf out, you can create a much bigger space, or you can remove the seats completely, and in that case you've got 3,200 litres of carrying capacity. At the wheel, a smart centre console and switchgear shared with pricier Fiats means that though the emphasis is on tough durability, you don't feel too hard done by. And it's all very practical, with numerous oddments compartments, including this handy shelf above the windscreen for storing everything from mobiles to maps. The dashboard, instruments, seats, upholstery and steering wheel have all been upgraded for this revised model, and everything falls to hand very easily. It would only take a few well-chosen options for you to really feel that you were at the wheel of something much more expensive. Pricing suggests that you'll be paying somewhere between £11,500 and £17,500 for your Fiat Doblo. You need to allow a few £100 extra if you want the optional third row seats, with the diesel models that most will probably need starting from around the £15,000 price point. Now, that puts the Fiat into contention with van-based mini MPVs like Citroen's Berlingo Multispace, Peugeot's partner TP, Renault's Kangoo and this Skoda Roomster. At first glance, the Fiat seems about £500 more on a model-for-model comparison with either of these rivals, but it's bigger, more powerful and better equipped, you need to remember. Now, if you're comparing the Doblo to a purpose-designed mini MPV, like say a Citroen C4 Picasso or a Renault Scenic, you're looking at saving £2,000 to £3,000. While if you go a step further and buy a 7-seat Doblo over, say, a 7-seat Vauxhall Zafira or Peugeot 5008, you could be looking at saving around twice that much. Just so you know the price of looking fashionable. Whether you choose your Doblo with multi-jet 1.6 or 2-litre diesel power, or indeed the entry-level 1.4-litre petrol unit, there's the option of trading up to a 7-seat version for a few £100 extra, as long as you don't go for a baseline trim level. Owners of the 1.6-litre multi-jet diesel might want to consider opting for the MTA 5-speed automatic transmission, but whichever Doblo you go for, you should find it decently equipped. Expect to find a height and reach adjustable steering wheel, electric front windows, remote central locking, body coloured bumpers and mirrors, and a decent quality CD stereo with MP3 compatibility. Safety-wise, though, it's a pity that anti-whiplash front head restraints aren't fitted on all models and there are no curtain airbags for rear seat passengers. Elsewhere, it's all been pretty well thought out. There are twin front and side airbags, plus I'm pleased to see that Fiat has included ESP stability control to help you out on a slippery surface or if you go into a corner too fast. That's fitted on all models, which I think is important for a high-sided family vehicle. It also includes a hill holder start function to stop you drifting backwards on uphill starts, and as usual there's ABS with electronic brake force distribution to make it more effective. A useful option worth considering is the clever Blue & Me hands-free system, which uses Bluetooth connectivity to enable the driver to make or receive phone calls or listen to MP3 tracks via voice recognition or steering wheel controls. Combining this with Blue & Me TomTom gets you a 4.3-inch colour sat-nav screen that not only tells you where to go, but communicates with the Doblo's in-car computer to offer up information on your driving. Now, Fiat is terribly proud of the fact that though power and torque have been increased across the board in this enhanced Doblo, fuel consumption returns and CO2 figures have also been improved by as much as 15%. Now, much of the credit for this can be laid at the door of the standard start and stop system, which cuts the engine at the lights or in heavy traffic when it would normally be idling or wasting fuel. Now, that means that owners of the 1.6 litre multi-jet diesel version, that's the most popular variant, can expect 54.3 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and will put out 138 grams per kilometre of CO2. If you go for the 2 litre diesel, that's the version that I'm driving here, you can expect 49.6 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and you'll put out 150 grams per kilometre of CO2. Petrol people, meanwhile, will manage 39.2 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and will put out 166 grams per kilometre of CO2. A standard gear shift change-up indicator should enable owners to get somewhere near those kind of figures on a day-to-day basis. And if you need a bit more help in that regard, there's the option of the clever Microsoft-developed EcoDrive system. Now, this downloads information on your driving efficiency and driving style onto a USB stick, which you can put into the slot down here, then stick into your home PC and get tutorials on how to drive more efficiently. Fiat reckon that this could save up to 15% in fuel costs. That would save the average driver between £105 and £175 a year, they claim. If you link EcoDrive to the further optional Blue & Me TomTom system, then you can get real-time information as you drive, and the sat-nav, if your tank's running low, can even direct you towards the nearest fuel station. Multi-jet engines are a lot cheaper to run these days. Engine inspections are required only every 21,000 miles, and that equates to a saving of around 25% if you run your car for 56,000 miles. More than 1 million Doblos have been sold since the turn of the century. And after a few days with this practical 5 or 7 seater, you can begin to understand why. But whereas the original version of this car was cheap, practical, but not a lot else, this one's curvy boxiness hides a remarkable degree of sophistication. That's a word I never thought I'd use in connection with this car, and it makes you question the whole need to spend thousands more on a compact people carrier that, though more fun to drive, will probably be smaller and costlier to run. A lot will come down to issues of image, of course. If that's not a problem, then this car deserves a chance. Fiat claims to understand families. After driving this one, I'm inclined to believe them.